Hey guys, this is Trevor. Just wanted to let you guys know that for the first half hour, 20 minutes or so of this episode, I had my mic muted. So I went back and re-recorded some of what I said, but my audio probably won't sync up with my video for the first 20 minutes or so if you're watching this on YouTube. Other than that, enjoy the video, guys. Welcome back to Following Noah on a Stormlight podcast. This week is episode 39. We have a couple interludes to do at the end of part 3 here. We have a lift interlude, and Tim is here to help us with that. How are you, Tim?
Hey, I'm doing well. I'm really glad to join you guys.
Great. And Paul, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's been a good week. You see, we got some good feedback on our video over Adelin's duel, which was super fun. So I'm hoping this
We
week can
did
be
get
just
some
as
good
fun.
content from that.
Also, it's always a good week to have Tim with us too. So glad he's here.
Eliot, how are you?
Doing good. This was a nice little break into some interludes here, some really intriguing stuff in these ones actually. So I'm really excited to talk about it.
Okay. Do you have 2 words to summarize this episode?
I do. So I've got for these chapters hunger and control.
Hunger and control. Okay. Paul?
I do. My 2 words for this week are vengeful and spirit.
Okay. Let's discuss these words for episode 39. All right. Eliot, we can start with you. What were your 2 words?
My second one was control. I'll start with hunger. Hunger was like this running, I couldn't tell if it was running theme or running gag throughout the whole first kind of interlude here. Some really interesting things going on with this new lift character and some new magical mechanics that we've got kind of working along with her hunger, which was it was really different. It was just kind of, I don't know, very, very surprising and kind of out of the blue. I did not really see that coming. So interesting stuff there. But also in the Parshendi chapter, I think Eshonai is starting to feel this like hunger for power or hunger for control, actually, which is my second word, and tied it in there. We have this definitely a battle for control in this Parshendi chapter, and then also going back to the lift interlude, we have our dark crescent scarred man show up again who seems to be bent on controlling kind of what's going on and who's gets to live pretty much. So yeah, that's it.
Okay. Paul, what about your 2 words?
Yes. So I actually was super close to choosing hunger as one of my 2 words for lift. I actually chose spirit. So my 2 words were vengeful and spirit. I chose spirit mostly for lift. She's got a lot of character, and it's at least portrayed very highly in the audiobook. Um, I forgot the name of the
Kate Redding.
reader, but she did a great job. Yes, she did an outstanding job. I feel like portraying lift. Um, in a mostly lighthearted way, And she's a pretty quirky character, so pretty fun. And then the other is vengeful, and I think it's fairly obvious to see that that's for our Zeth interlude, um, as well as some other stuff with Kaladin in jail. He's not super happy about it, so yeah, vengeful.
I think it's funny that Brandon Sanderson put one of the longest chapters in the lift interlude. and one of the shortest chapters, right next to the Zeth interlude. So I can hand it over to Tim right here and have him talk about Lift for a bit, because Lift is his favorite character. Go for it, Tim.
Thank you. Yeah, I really like Lift. She's a fun character, optimistic and yet pessimistic at the same time. And that it's hard to get her down. Man, yeah, I really like her story here and the progression of she's just, her whole point of going into the palace is to steal their food because she's bored. Yeah,
And hungry.
and hungry. Yeah, and you're 13, so what do you do? No, I really like her as a character, and then I really like her growth throughout this series.
Okay. Yeah. Elliot, what were your thoughts on this Lift interlude, your first impressions?
I think my first impression was humor. I was chuckling a bit as I was reading this. One, just because, like you said, Tim, Lift is a pretty quirky character. She's very different from a lot of characters that we've had so far, and I just kind of felt I was just kind of chuckling as we're watching a much younger character, a much more immature character, if you will, kind of process the world around. And then I even noticed just like the narration of this section is written at like a lower reading level, if you will. And that's kind of maybe a derogatory way to say that I don't really mean. It's written in the style of the character that it's about. And just it makes for a very different chapter that you read through. Very different from the much more kind of heavy and more grander scale stuff that we've just come out of with this big duel with Kaladin and Adolin. And now here we are into just kind of goofy Lift sneaking around this palace trying to steal the food and joking about breasts and all the goofy whatever's going on in this chapter that you're just like, okay,
It's very
it's a fun chapter.
refreshing.
Yeah.
And it's very short. The Zeth interlude was like actually less than a tenth, probably, of the Lift interlude.
For real. I took more notes on Interlude 9 than I did the next 3 chapters combined, like easily. Way, way more stuff packed into this Lift chapter, but lots of really cool stuff and lots of little details. I'm sure there's way more in here that I did not, don't understand here on my first time through, but I noted down just a ton of stuff like, what is this? What is this? This is probably important, but I don't know why. Lots of that kind of stuff that was fun. I would enjoy coming back, I'm sure, and reading this chapter after knowledge that you guys have. I'd be willing to bet there's some good stuff in here for the rereader for sure. But it's definitely yeah.
Yes.
But I mean, even to start us off, we're in I think a new place that we haven't been before. We're in the city of am I going to say it right? Azamir.
Yes.
Azamir. Yeah, I I say that
Could be
hesitantly because we might have actually been here before. I'll maybe come back to that here in a little bit, but new place, new kind of setting. Um, yeah, everything's a little different.
We do have a spell check, and it's just one name, and it's Lift's Spren's name. What is his name? Elliot, we'll start with you.
I'm hoping this one is straightforward, but sometimes they're okay. All right, I'll just trust my gut then. Lift Spren, his name is Windle.
I did. It was noted in there, so I did go ahead and write it down. I heard it was Wendell, and I just went very straightforward with it. So I went Wendall. Based on how Elliot said it, I would think it might be an I instead of an E, but
Wendley.
There is a Y in it,
Okay.
so
fancy.
WYN.
WYNDLE.
Well, okay.
Little tricky.
Wendell.
Mhm.
Wendell. Okay. So one thing I did want to touch on about Wendell, um, not as much about what he was saying, but I guess what I think is most interesting about him and his relationship. For one, I really like how they juxtapose. I feel like we've seen that pretty commonly with our characters so far, at like Kaladin and his friend being kind of, you know, polar sides there. Um, I think it's really interesting how Lift can like touch Wendell like physically, like grab a hold and stuff, which is like not a thing. Is it? It's like not normal, which I think is really interesting, and I'm curious about that. Um, but yeah, I'm glad to see it. I feel like some consistency of the Spren kind of being a good match for the people they're with, kind of balancing the characters out. I'm very happy about that.
I was trying to figure out through this section what kind of spren Wendell is, right? Because we have Syl, who we know is an honor spren. We have Pattern, who's a lie spren or cryptic or whatever he wants to be known by. You know, what's going to be like the attribute that Wendell is tied to? And I couldn't come up with a guess. There's a lot of stuff in here. I'm sure there's maybe something that hints at it, but I couldn't quite decide. Like you said, he seems very serious. He seems very like bent on, you know, teaching Lift what being a surge binder is about, and she doesn't want any of it, right? She just, you know, doesn't even care, doesn't even want to, you know, hush now, Voidbringer, like don't talk to me. And I couldn't figure it out. I don't know if you had any guesses, Paul, but I was trying to figure it out.
I don't have any serious guesses. I mean, the most prominent thing that I thought of is just his growing vines and all that stuff.
Yeah,
It's more like nature-esque or more like
definitely.
the others are more like abstract. I mean, I guess Syl is like wind, but wind is like a I don't know. It's more abstract in general, I guess. Um so I don't know, maybe he instead of a wind spren, he's earth spren, and now we're gonna find like fire spren and water spren, you know. That'd be kind of cool.
They're called flame spren.
True. Is it
Yeah.
is this the argument of is there like lava spren or magma spren? Like, below the ground it's magma spren, right? Anyways.
We've already decided that everything has a spren, right? So
True, so there's magma spren and lava spren. Two, they're different, I promise. Yes, true. That's true. That's a lot of spren knowledge for you. Really hope you're not watching this episode for the first time if you're a new watcher, because you were lost. Anyways, I don't have a serious guess as to what Wendell is. I guess on the aspect of like honor spren, lie spren are more like big things. He's like a little tree spren. Like I don't think we know enough about him. He does seem more like, yeah, he does seem more like grounded though. So
Lightning
Yeah,
maybe you
spren.
could say
He's grounded.
responsible spren. That's my guess. Responsibility spren. That's my guess.
Hey Trevor, am I allowed to tell them the name of the spren? Because I don't know that the books ever tell you the actual name of the spren.
I'd
hold
wait
off
for
if you
that.
like.
I'd wait for that.
Okay.
You know, we at least have to wait and see if we can get more information before guessing.
Yeah, that's the whole entire point of the podcast is to sit here and smile at them as they don't know what they're doing.
True. That's true.
See, Tim is on our side though. I'm glad to see Tim on our side because he wants to tell us. Trevor's like,
Well, I just
he
want
just
to see how
laughs
far
at
you
us.
can run with it if I give you a little bit.
well,
I don't have to give you anything.
I can take us a little further down the rabbit hole, and this is jumping perhaps a little bit ahead, but I think we got handed what Lift's first oath is. we learn that she's an edge dancer, and we get given the line later on. It's a little bit kind of out of context, as if it's just like a thought of hers, but it says, "I will remember those who have been forgotten." And as soon as I read that, I was like, "Oh, that's like right in the vein of the like oaths that we've seen Kaladin speaking. That's got to be like oath number one for the
Edge
edge
dancers.
dancers." Yeah,
Mhm.
so I don't know if that quite, like tells me what Wendell might be, maybe like memory spren or something like that. I completely guessing, but that might be a hint for us that what could be her oath.
Yeah, I think it's technically the second oath because the first one is life before death, think for
Oh, it's
reasons,
that.
turning for destination.
Gotcha. Yep, I knew
Yeah,
that.
but you're right there.
So I think it's kind of interesting. So, um, Lift, I guess, knows the ideal or whatever of the edge dancers, but she doesn't, or at least whenever we meet her, she doesn't know like what her power is, right, or like how it works and stuff. Because she, it's funny, she refers to it as her awesomeness, which
Yep.
I couldn't help but laugh here, like hearing that over and over. It was just like Elliot said, it was written like from the perspective of like this 13-year-old kid, like, and
And
it's
then I
pretty
was
funny.
awesome.
Yeah, it's all
Yeah,
her. Lift
yeah,
used her awesomeness. It was super effective.
it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, so I want to talk about darkness for a second and who Lift describes darkness as. What are his motives? What is he doing here? He knows Lift is here. Why is he here? Elliot, did you pick up on this at all?
Yes, I did. So first off, this is clearly the guy we've seen a couple times now. He's shown up in an interlude. We saw him in the prologue of this book. Yasna ran into him randomly in the middle of the palace. We saw before in the previous interlude that he like hunted a guy who's making shoes, right? And he was a surge binder and he killed him. And we kind of surmised that he was hunting down surge binders and taking them out, which is consistent with exactly what he's doing here. He's tracking down Lift. He somehow, knows she's there and knows she has abilities. And he also picks up immediately that she's an edge dancer. I think he might even be the one that tells us that or maybe it's Wendell, I don't remember, says that she's just by witnessing the abilities that she has. So this guy knows a lot. This guy clearly knows exactly what he's doing. He's very experienced at hunting down surge binders, which that brings up all kinds of questions of, why is he doing this? Who the heck is he? But you're right. A few interesting things happen here. To kind of run through them in order, we see him bring out some sort of animal that sucks the stormlight out of Lift. And we don't get a super detailed description of this creature. My only guess was that maybe perhaps this is a Larkin, which we saw before in the interlude with Risen. That's right, Risen. And at the where she like falls off the island and lands in the water and breaks her legs, and then they give her this Larkin, which we're kind of important and we don't know why. Just the description of that creature seemed to maybe be similar to what we just saw here, and I'm kind of just correlating. The Larkin was really important for some reason. This is a rather impressive ability that this little creature has, so he does that somehow, which you know brings Lift under control pretty easily. What else happens here? He's clearly a surge binder. Lift notices that surge binding as he's doing it. We don't quite see like what he's doing or exactly how enough to pick up. And then, eventually he captures her, tries to kill her, but then her little friend that she saves from dying stops him. A lot of stuff packed all in a few pages.
I want to think slightly about the Larkin. So I remember that chapter, the Risen Interlude. And isn't a Larkin basically just a dragon? Maybe I don't remember for sure. It's like a
It's
little
like a crab dragon.
reptile thing. And
Dragon crab.
of course, a dragon crab mix. And I'm really sad that I don't remember the description of the creature here, but I remember it being very weird, like very comical even.
I've got
Um,
it right here if you'd like me to read it.
I actually would love to.
The little animal was like a kremling, but with wings, bound wings, tied up legs. It had a strange little face, not crabbish like a kremling, more like a tiny axe hound with a snout, mouth, and eyes. It seemed sickly, and its shimmering eyes were pained. How could she tell that?
Maybe it is. I thought I remembered it being something else, but it definitely could
I think
be
the
based
wings
on that
are
description.
I think the wings are what made me think of it, describing it having wings. And I remember the Larkin being described the same way. Could be something different. I think it could be something different at this point, but this is a possibility here. But yeah, intriguing ability there. If
Very true.
so, this chapter brings up some very interesting questions about him that we haven't really seen. I think this is the most we've ever seen of him by. So we get some information, but he keeps getting described, and I think this is from Lift's point of view that he keeps being described with having dead eyes, and I think it's Wendell is terrified of him. Wendell's like keeps mentioning something about how abnormal or terrible or weird or something that he is. All of that. I wonder, is this guy not even human? Is this guy like something else entirely? Lift describes him as darkness. He seems to be almost just kind of this void of life kind of thing. But on the flip side, he's clearly a surge binder. He has some of those abilities. He has a shard blade, um, which maybe all that kind of points to him being human. I do got to say, I think he is a surge binder, and I even have a guess to what order I
Okay.
think he might be in. And we didn't really get to see much of what his abilities are, so we don't really know what his surges are. Not that would tell us a whole lot, because really all we know about right now is what Windrunners and Lightweavers. So if he's not one of those, we're not going to really know what he's doing. But the way he talks got me. He talks about the law and how everything revolves around following the law, and he's described as like and he doesn't care about what should be done. He just cares about enforcing the law. And I say this with like a little bit of a tear in my eye. I think this guy might be a skybreaker. And I say it with a tear in my eye because that's the order that I tested into of Skybreaker. And this does not seem like the kind of guy that I want to be in an order with here. So I'm a little nervous that maybe he is, just because from the brief descriptions, the little details we've gotten in some of the epigraphs before, and a little bit of the info on the test we took, it seems like those kinds of ideals seem to line up with kind of what the Skybreakers are about. So that's my guess at this point.
Seems logical, but I guess we'll see.
Imagine not being a Windrunner. Dang. I'm kidding.
Yeah, or not being an edge dancer. Ugh.
Yeah, honestly. Wow.
Well, one of the things I wanted to bring up, in case you guys didn't notice, was on page 696 of, I'm not sure exactly, I think the hardback is what it would be. I've got the Kindle version, but it tells me the page number. Anyway, this is from Lift's perspective. Lift thought. Someone scratched a face off that one, talking about paintings.
Mhm.
Who'd ruin a painting like that? And such a fine one, the heralds all in a row. Any thoughts?
This was definitely something I noticed right away. It's got to be just the same as we've seen this like several times, like 2 or 3 times now. Someplace with statues where one of the heralds is missing, as well as the prelude, right, where there's 9 swords and 9 of them come out, and one's left behind. I'm assuming that this is the same thing that's being alluded to.
It's just this too. I noted this down, and I thought the same thing that you're thinking, Paul. I think it also might just be of the mistress that we saw in that one interlude where she was going through and just like randomly vandalizing the art. That was also why I hesitantly say that this is a new place that we've been. I was trying to remember back. I didn't get a chance to go back and read that interlude. I probably should have. If that interlude told us where that was, I want to say it was either in Azir or like Amul or one of the other lands down there. But they talk about like primes in that interlude. I remember that's stuff they talk about. So is this just a leftover from the mistress has been here and she up this herald painting? I'm not sure.
Great question.
Any thoughts on why she would be doing this?
We've talked about that before, and we didn't come to any very solid conclusions. We basically, Paul and I, if I remember right, just kind of shrugged our shoulders as to we she's going through and vandalizing all the stuff. We're kind of waiting for her to resurface and become important again, and she hasn't really yet. So I've got my eye out for her, but no real concrete theories.
Any more thoughts on Lift's interlude?
I have one last one if you guys don't.
Go for it.
I just wanted to point out at the end when Darkness is following the law and lets Lift go. He says, I'll just read from here. His shard blade vanished to mist. He'd been bested, but he didn't seem to care. Not a curse, not even a tightening of the eyes. He stood up and pulled on his gloves by the cuffs. First one, then the other. Praise Yezir, he said. Herald of kings. May he lead in wisdom if he ever stops drooling. Any thoughts on that?
At the end, did it say, may he lead in wisdom if he ever stops drooling or dreaming?
Drooling.
Okay.
I forgot that was in there.
I put some question marks in my notes about that name in particular of trying to think about who that is, because they say that a couple times. It's almost like a curse or an expletive that they use, for Yazir's sake or whatever it is they say. But when he says King of Heralds, we know who the King of the Heralds is, right? We met him all the way back at the Prelude. That's Yezrian, or he's got other names, right?
Yep.
But we know that guy's the leader of the heralds, and Yazir is not that far off of like a sounding-ish name. So I'm kind of guessing that's another version of his name, or this is kind of another culture that just has a different name for him. So I'm guessing that's who that's a reference to. The drooling, I did question that too, Paul. I was like, wait, is that a typo? Drooling? Is that what he meant to say? Like, that's a little weird. The only guess I had as to why he would say something like that is we know the heralds are super old, right? They're like at least 4,000 years old, right? Because we saw them 4,000 years ago. Who knows how long ago they've been around before then. So maybe he's just making some sort of reference to how old he and he's like, can't even do anything but drool. He's so old. Completely a guess. Completely a guess. I really have no idea.
I'm not quite sure either. My guess is that, like, I don't know, maybe Yazir's taking a long nap or something. Um,
Yeah,
I
I didn't
like both
expect
of
you
those
guys
guesses.
to necessarily
could be both,
know what's going
honestly.
on. But
So before we move on, I want to like kind of recap what we just learned here in this interlude, because we just learned a bunch, right? We've, as I mentioned before, all we've really seen before is Windrunners and Light Weavers. We just got a bunch of information about Edge Dancers. We know that they have Spren, which we expected that. We got to see her Spren. Her Spren like is this vine that like grows along the ground in that way. We know that that Spren is somehow related to the old magic. We didn't really get to talk about this, but it's kind of referenced that somehow that's related to the old magic. We don't really know why. We know that edge dancers can affect growth and friction are essentially their surges, right? Like those are their two surges we've learned. So they can grow things or regrow things as we see at the end. And then they can slide around really fast, like they're on ice. And then lift can like metabolize food into Stormlight, which I was trying to figure out if that's an edge dancer thing or if that's a lift thing, and I couldn't quite figure it out. It seems like that's a lift thing, but I could be wrong. Maybe that dancer thing. A little weird.
Just to jump in on that real quick,
Yeah.
I definitely took that as an edge dancer thing. Just because I would assume that all of the or like people in one
Mm-hmm.
Knights Radiant group like wouldn't use Stormlight differently. I guess like it would all basically be the same.
Mm-hmm.
Or I don't know. Maybe it's awkward. This would be kind of weird, but maybe it's a location thing. Like so, Kaladin and Shalon and Seth are the ones we've seen. No, I'm gonna discount that because we've seen them suck in Stormlight, right? That's like
Right.
the normal thing. And I was gonna say Kaladin and Shalon do it the same way. I was gonna say the same with Seth, but he's from Shinovar, and I would count that as a different place, but who knows? I think it's an edge dancer thing. Long story short, unless there's something really, really unique about Lift specifically.
Mm-hmm.
But
Something we do know is unique to Lift is her ability to touch her Spren, or like her ability to interact with Spren. I think that's mentioned specifically.
Isn't Wendell surprised that happens?
Yes, I
yeah.
think they even talk about that. Lift, says that, and Wendell's like, "Well, you're not be able to, interact with me like that, but you can." So that's weird. And okay, so we know that. Then we're learning a lot more about this darkness guy who has surge binding abilities. He's got a shard blade. He obeys the law. That's his overarching rule. He's coming after all the surge binders he can find. I feel like that's all the big points, but lots of information coming in this interlude, way more than I think we've learned in at least any of the recent interludes that we've been through. Lots of stuff.
So it's a bunch of characters that we really haven't met or don't have anything to do with our main characters, but it also feels very relevant. So,
Yep.
yeah, I will say. Go ahead.
It's one thing that I love about interludes in general, in them, how Brandon Sanderson uses them, because we can always kind of look back to them and get little pieces of information. And it's always like new. You never know what you're gonna get. So I really liked this interlude. I liked all of these interludes. So
Yeah, I will say Darkness, while he seems to understand right away, as you said, from watching Lift, that she's an edge dancer, but he doesn't expect her to be able to have access to Stormlight.
That's true. He is
On page
confused when
700
when Lift like goes for the dinner roll. Like she
Yeah.
has a chance to break for it. Instead of running, she grabs the dinner roll, and the guy's like, "All that for a dinner roll?" So you're right. He that part of it surprised him.
Mhm.
Interesting. As usual, lots of answers and even more questions.
This next interlude is quite a bit shorter, and a lot less information is given to us. Seth's kind of just moping in Urithiru. He's in Urithiru, so that's kind of cool. We have no idea where that is, but he says he's there, so that's kind of cool. Anybody want to pick this up?
I would love
He seems to think he's sane. That's pretty funny.
So I'm actually going to skip to Trevor's last point where he said Zeth is ... not happy. I think that basically sums it up. So Zeth here is questioning everything. Last time we saw him, he had his fight with Kaladin and them, and found out that there are other surge binders and things like that. And we find out that's what he was made truthless for. He raised the alarm that the Knights Radiant were coming back. And I guess he was like seen as crazy for it and marked as truthless. And he starts questioning everything at this point, like what is truthless? Like if they are back, if I wasn't wrong, then this whole oath stone business has just been for naught. Like there's no validity to it. So that just means he's been killing people for
no reason.
And he's very upset with that. And he says he might kill some people because he wants to, so he's not feeling too good at the moment. But I'm really excited to see where this goes, just because he's determined to get to the bottom of this and to make things straight. And so I think we're going to find out a lot more information as we go forward with more Zeth stuff as to how he got to his current spot and who's the people kind of behind this, pulling the strings here and everything like that.
Zeth is questioning everything at this point, right? I mean, everything that has defined his existence for the past, however, since he was thrown out from the Shinovar people. He's also, I think, a little bit in denial still at this point. I mean, he's questioning, everything I thought was wrong. Are all these people I killed, was that for nothing? But it's kind of like Shallan actually a little bit, where he's like almost kind of shutting that out, where he's like, oh, I can't think about that. I've already got these demons that are terrorizing me every time I close my eyes. He's afraid to blink because during that blink he sees the people he's killed and hears the screams. And so if he admits that he killed all those people for nothing, I feel like he's gonna just snap, right, and just kind of like explode, or to like just completely break. And so he can't do that, and so he almost can't accept what he's seen, even though he knows that seeing Kaladin and seeing what Kaladin can do means that what he's been through has been a lie. He still can't accept it, and he's really mad about it.
Eliot, you've made this comparison in the past with Zeth, but if you think back to the Wandersail chapter with Hoyd and Kaladin, yes, the whole punchline to that chapter, if you will, is if the higher power behind your orders doesn't actually exist, whose fault is all of these crimes? So to 30 seconds summarize, the people of the Great Abyss is what they call themselves, and they punish by death anybody who makes the slightest infraction. And they always say the emperor or whoever does not accept failure. And then the guys go up into the tower, figure out the dude has been dead and has been dead for years, and then everybody freaks out that if he's dead, if he has been dead, then the faults of all of these murders and all of these deaths are on us, not on him, because he's dead. So same thing here. If Seth's not truthless, or if he doesn't actually have to follow this oath stone, or whatever the rules are here, if that's not the case, then whose fault is all these deaths that Seth's been told to do?
Yep, exactly. Paul, I did want to get your thoughts and your take on a little bit of, I think, new information that we're getting here about Zeth's past, and that he hints at why he became truthless. We've been wondering about this for a really long time, and I think this is a first really concrete hint we've got here, in that he says that it was because he was like trying to raise the alarm about the return of the Radiance and or the Voidbringers. I'm not quite sure how to process this, or how that went down in his land. I mean, we know that the truth, right? They never tell a lie. And so we've guessed before that, maybe Zeth told a lie and then they kicked him out. Is this apparently the lie in told? Like, Paul, what were you thinking when he talked about that?
I definitely think so. That's what he's basically saying, is that this was like what deemed him truthless. Was raising that alarm. So I'm assuming he told whoever, hey, the Knights Radiant is coming back, and they were like, nah, you. Well, I don't know how their whole system works, but whoever's in charge deemed that, no, that's crazy, like, you're wrong. So he was deemed truthless, and then is now where he is now. But I don't know. I guess I don't know about that process, right? Like, I don't know. Did they
Right.
give him an oath stone, and is that part of being truthless, or is that something else? I'm not quite sure. Maybe this was like a more capital offense than just telling a lie or something, like yelling fire or something. I don't know. Um,
The other part of it too, I'm trying to put in the right place, is his shard blade or honor blade or whatever it is that he has. How does that fit into the equation too? Like, did that come after he was made truthless, or did that come before he was made truthless? Or is that part of why this whole process went down? Did he find that honor blade, and somehow part of that was like he discovered something and it was like, hey, the Knights Radiant are coming back and the Voidbringers are coming back, and then he gets thrown out? Like, where did Shardbearer Zeth come about in the timeline of it all? That's another question I've got.
that's a good one. I really don't know. I want to say he had it before. That's my guess. If not, then I feel like it's kind of lame. Like, they were just like, hey, go kill that guy with your surge binding powers, and he did, and it happened to be a shard blade, so he got a shard blade or something. I feel like that wouldn't happen.
I wonder too, he's in Urithiru here when we see him, right? He mentions that this is not the first time he's been to Urithiru. He's been there before. I wonder if he found his blade here in Urithiru. That would be a good place. If he was like, he just came across it and didn't, kill someone to take it, like we've seen all the other times we've seen someone get a shard blade. I wonder if he found it in Urithiru somehow. That might be part of it.
That could explain things also, because from what we've heard of, I guess, with Urithiru, like, we know it's a different place. Somewhat, and so that could explain why he's different. Maybe if he got his shard blade or his powers in Urithiru, he's some different kind of next level surge binder,
The Jedi Temple.
Exactly.
Pretty much.
He read straight from the sacred texts.
I want to just read the quote on how this interlude ends. it's Zeth talking to himself in his head. It would take days to get to where he was going, but he would find answers. Or barring that, someone to kill, of his own choice this time. I just wanted to read that because Zeth's mental state right now is volatile,
Great.
volatile at best. He's not happy with his situation. He needs to go find answers. That's what he's going to do. He doesn't tell us where he's going, but he's gonna go demand answers and or beat somebody up because he's questioning everything. Tim, do you have anything about Zeth before we move on?
I do. All the way back in Way of Kings Interlude 6, when we're learning about Zeth, you see him here. Okay. Yeah. Page 492, Interlude 6. Makek had begun to believe those rumors that Zeth had a shard blade. He hadn't yet demanded that Zeth relinquish the blade. If he did so, he would discover the second of Zeth's two forbidden actions. He was required to carry the blade until his death, after which Shin stone shamans would recover it from whomever had killed him. So that brought up some questions, and I thought of that when you mentioned you were talking about Zeth's past.
Yeah, that is some helpful info there, because obviously that means the shamans from Shinovar are aware of the fact that he has one. The implication there might even be that like the people own that blade, and so if he loses it, they're going to come, claim it, take it back. So yeah, that does definitely play into the equation there.
Okay. We have our last interlude of this part. We have interlude 11, which is Eshonai point of view. And not all is well with the Parshendi here. By the end of the chapter, we have some people deserting and people threatening to be killed over not taking storm form, and we there's certainly a lot of unrest here among the Parshendi. Does anybody want to start with this one?
I would actually really like to. So I will say I think this was my least favorite of the three interludes we read. And the only reason for that, not that it was bad, but that I feel like I knew basically everything that was coming for the most part. We know Eshonai ever since getting storm form is like basically being controlled. It even says that Eshonai hears a rhythm that's like someone crying for help or something, and you can just tell it's like actual Eshonai is like hidden deep in somewhere, is trying to maybe fight back, and Stormform Eshonai is trying to take over all the Parshendi right now. And just with everything we've seen since discovering Stormform, that seems pretty like straightforward, I guess. There's a lot of bad stuff going on. Eshonai is very commanding and trying to get rid of all these unnecessary other forms. She says, and get almost everyone to storm form. So yeah, there were no, I guess, really profound thoughts that I had about this. It was just more straightforward in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely was not nearly as much, reading between the lines here or hidden information. And I too was kind of cringing a bit in this chapter, just because it's frustrating to watch the Parshendi fall apart like this. We were so close to peace, and now we're going so far away from any chance at peace. We I got very excited when we first met Esh and I, thinking, oh, here's someone with a good head on their shoulders. Here's someone who can talk sense, is going to be willing to listen. She is so changed. She is so different. This is a very different version of Esh and I. Someone who is completely taking over. Someone who's willing to execute people who don't do what she wants them to do. Like, wow, what a turnaround.
Yeah, really, the only thing I wanted to point out was this is the reason why the negotiations didn't turn out. It was literally like a week or so of, if the negotiations were a week before, they could have maybe worked something out.
Yep.
But instead, she's in storm form when that happened.
This is definitely the movie or show moment where you just kind of yell at your TV or something and get upset because it was so close to working out. But now we just kind of along for the ride, I think. So.
But not all the Parshendi are on the same page here. There are some that desert and refuse to take storm form and run. And when the report comes to Esh and I's like, well, what about the guards? Did they kill the guards that were looking after them? And they're like, no, the guards went with them. So there's not everybody's on the same page here with storm form. Some of the Parshendi are super on board with it. Some of them are afraid of it. So to the point where they will desert and abandon their families here. So discord, if you will, among Parshendi.
Yeah, I was very surprised that the other war forms were willing to desert. I thought that the way the Parshendi worked, they would have had more faith in Eshonai or something like that. Now, granted, it was probably the right time to desert, but that one did take me by surprise.
I'm starting to think of like war form for the Parshendi as like the Dalinar form. That's the they are about war, they are about fighting, but it's also like a form of honor and doing the right thing and achieving the goal. They're very goal driven and like, let's get this done, a very logical thinker through the things, whereas like storm form is more like the Zeth form. It's the I'm gonna wreck the house form because I feel like this needs to be done
because I
kinda,
can. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
kind of thing. So I actually was not surprised that the war forms were, there was Eshonai's general, I forget what his name was, that kind of
Food, I think.
I think so.
I think so.
I think you're right. I think you're right. Kind of led that. So and I think Eshonai she even has a moment where she kind of reveals that she intentionally did not have her trusted like generals and soldiers change with her, because she knew that they were like logical thinkers and that they would question her. And so that she very intentionally chose other more like weaker minds to transform into storm form first, because she knew she could control them. So yeah, interesting and manipulation and all kinds of stuff going on in the Parshendi camp.
I just want to highlight how dire of a situation that Thude would have thought it to be that he would desert, because Eshonai assumes that they're dead because they left 2 days before a high storm. And so Eshonai's not even worried about it. She says, oh, they're dead anyway, forget about them. And Thude and the rest of the deserters ran for it anyway, because they thought that was a better solution than accepting storm form.
I did want to say one thing about this. with Parshendi deserters. That gives me hope for. I feel bad. I don't remember his name. What was our bridgeman?
Relaine.
Shen.
Shen. Relaine.
Yes, Shen or Relaine.
Yeah.
It gives me hope because I feel like he's gonna try and come back and maybe run into these deserters or see all the stuff going on here and take his bit of inspiration that he saw with Kaladin in them, and maybe turn that into some kind of Parshendi revolt or something. There's a lot of tension and stuff going on now with the Parshendi with Stormform that kind of opens up a way that maybe Shen could be a cooler character, or maybe he could get Stormform and then I'll lose thought and go try and kill Kaladin, which would not be as cool. But
That would not be as
there's
cool.
more potential. Yeah, there would be more. I see some like options opening up where he could become a bigger character as time goes on, and I think that's really cool. That's what I'm hoping for. I would love to see that.
Well, and pulling on that string a little more, like what if, Kaladin has inspired enough in him to where then let's say theoretically he does take storm form. Maybe his voice of reason is loud enough to where he can, control himself in storm form. And then maybe he has enough power to go up against, let's say, Eshonai and maybe stand up against her, maybe all because, Kaladin had that effect on him. That would be quite the storyline.
That would be really cool. I like that.
Any more thoughts on our interludes?
I wanted
Go for it.
I do want to note something here real quickly, actually. Eshonai, we see over the course of this interlude, has some new rhythms in her head, some new radio stations she can tune into with the things that she hears. But I noticed that they're all very like dangerous and hateful and angry. Like she now has the rhythm of ridicule and the rhythm of destruction and the rhythm of fury and the rhythm of spite. Like all these just like nasty things that, I totally see all that like playing into this, new persona that she has, like bringing out all the negative things in her potentially because she's listening to this, nasty, angry, power hungry radio stations.
She's got the teenage angst music playing in the background.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I would say more extreme than necessarily bad.
Sure.
In terms of what they are, but they are definitely things we would generally indicate. Ridicule versus laughter or something like that. They're different, but yeah, I would steer that direction, but definitely like very different.
Yep.
Good stuff. All right. Any closing thoughts on the interludes before we do chapter 59?
I like
No.
Lift.
I also like Lift.
Zeth isn't evil, he's just misunderstood.
You have been claiming that for quite a while, so
I have, and I'll be honest, at this point it will take a lot to take me away from that. But but I'm still.
is he
He's still
misunderstood
cool.
if he misunderstands himself? Does that count?
Yeah, sure. If he was misled,
Sure.
I think that's more accurate than misunderstanding himself.
I'm assuming that Zeth is going to before the end of this book, and I am looking forward to maybe seeing what else he does before this book is over, and then kind of revisiting our do for Zeth discussion. But I do want to see what happens between now and the end of the book if we get more Zeth between then. But I do want to come back into do you feel sorry for Zeth?
All right. Chapter 59 into part 4 of Words of Radiance. Kaladin is in jail. If you guys don't remember, he requested a boon that was not given to him and challenged Amram in front of everybody, and he was arrested for it. And Dalinar was not happy. Elhokar was extremely not happy. Kaladin is now not happy. And the only person who might be happy after all of that duel is Adolin, because he got like 5 shards out of it, and
he's alive.
And he didn't die. So Adolin's
man.
we're assuming he's happy, but everybody else is upset. So
Wit is also having a nice time.
Wit is having a nice time. So we can.
Mm-hmm.
When is he
not
not?
happy?
This is a fun Wit chapter. I will give you that. Kaladin is sitting in here moping. Syl and Kaladin have a couple back and forths, and then Wit shows up. Do we want to talk about Syl and a couple things she says before we talk about Fleet and this story that Kaladin gives to Wit?
Yeah, I think we should talk about Syl first. I think it's pretty straightforward, in comparison at least. So this is a common thing we've seen with Syl and Kaladin. Syl is kind of the voice of reason for Kaladin when he gets all sad boy hours. He gets really upset. He is now swearing that there are no good light eyes again. Dalinar is crooked, just like the rest of them, because he didn't get his way. And I mean, albeit it is like extreme circumstances, it kind of bugged me a little bit. I understand you're upset, you're in jail, I get it. Kind of. But I mean, this happens every time something doesn't go his way. See, if something doesn't go his way and he hates all light eyes, and Syl is like, stop it. Or this is the duality of Kaladin. It's that, or something goes well and he's like, oh, but this one little thing could have been better. And Syl is like, stop it. And that's Kaladin in a nutshell.
There's one thing that Syl says here that I did notice and wanted to highlight, because it maybe reinforces a little bit of what we actually talked about in one of the interludes. So they're having a discussion like, does he break out of jail? Does he not? And Syl kind of ultimately concludes, laws don't matter. What's right matters. And that kind of embodies, I'm extrapolating a little bit here, perhaps, a bit of the mindset of like the Windrunner, right? They're about, doing the right thing, protecting those who need protection, not necessarily, the exact opposite of what we just say in an interlude, like almost word for word. He comes out and says, it's not about what's good, it's about following the law. Just very, very opposite there in there, what they're saying there. I don't know if that is my guess that he's a Skybreaker. I don't know enough about Skybreakers and Windrunners and how they work together, but very, very opposite here, those two little mindsets. Time for Wit.
I want to talk about Kaladin a little bit longer, though. How long do you guys think Kaladin's going to be in here? Do you think Dalinar's going to leave him here, or do you think they're going to get him out?
He's going to be there for a while. Maybe not his, I don't know what his full sentence is or whatever. But I mean, he's not getting out in a week or so. It's going to be a while. It's going to be several months, I think.
I'm gonna go on the other end of the spectrum. Kaladin is not the most patient person ever. I'm gonna guess one of two things is gonna happen. Either Dalinar is gonna get him out in a reasonably short amount of time, or Kaladin's gonna lose patience and he's gonna break out in a reasonably short amount of time. So I would guess we're talking more about weeks than months, would be my guess.
Isn't that one of the first conversations he has right here, is asking Syl if she would help him break out if he wanted to, and Sill's like, well, do you want to? And Kaladin says, I might have to. I don't know. So he's already restless, and he's only been there for what a day, a couple hours at this point. So, all right, I do want to read part of Wit's entrance here, because it's not because it's like a big profound quote. It's just one of my favorites, and it's really funny to me. This is Wit speaking to start. Perhaps a story for a child, Wit said. I will tell you one, to get you in the mood. A bunny rabbit and a chick went frolicking in the grass together on a sunny day. A chick? Baby chicken? Kaladin said. And a what? Ah, forgot myself for a moment, Wit said. Sorry. Let me make it more appropriate for you. A piece of wet slime and a disgusting crab thing with 17 legs slunk across the rocks together on an insufferably rainy day. Is that better?
Kaladin says yes.
Yes,
Like,
Kaladin
the next
says.
line is kind of like, yeah, actually.
Yeah, that works. I love that line so much because it's so funny, because it fits so well with how Brandon Sanderson set this up, and Brandon Sanderson is making fun of his own world building here. It's like, oh wait, I forgot where I am. Hold on, and then a disgusting slime and a crab thing with 17 legs. I really enjoy it.
It was fun. I think I'm trying to put my thoughts together here. So this with Wit, this conversation or this story that goes with Wit and Kaladin is interesting to me, because I don't know how intentional it was or not. Like, I don't know if it was supposed to make Kaladin think, or if it was way deeper than that. Because he starts like telling a story, and Kaladin makes assumptions about it. And then at the end, Wit is like, oh, like I haven't heard that story before, or something, like as if it wasn't planned, and he kind of let Kaladin make the story.
Right.
And it was kind of complex. I guess it's something that, in all honesty, I didn't want to dive too deep into, because I was a little afraid. Like, I feel like it could be really deep. It's one of those stories of like, it's whatever you make it to be. Therefore, I tried to not think about it.
Didn't make it anything, so it wasn't anything.
Yeah, exactly.
I actually had a similar reaction to you, Paul. I got through the whole thing, and I really didn't take many notes throughout the whole thing, because I'm waiting for pieces to make sense. And I kind of get to the end, and it's like, okay, now what? Like, I'm glad we have Trevor and Tim here, actually, because they might, probably not, but they might be willing to tell us, whether this is important or not. But I kind of got to the end and was like, yeah, okay, moving on. What was that?
It's
Just a
as
little
important
train
as
that
you would like
could.
it to be.
Fleet is the little train that could. On the uphills, he's got to go chug, 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 and then on the downhills, he goes. Brr, 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 brr.
Exactly that. Yeah.
That's how the story goes. He loses ground
Yeah.
on the uphill and gains ground on the downhill, and as he's trying to get over the misted mountains into Shinovar, he dies.
Yeah, the Misty Mountains. Exactly.
Huh. I definitely thought he made it up over the mountains and then down and almost to the water.
No, because he dies in front of Shinovar. That's why there's no high storms in Shinovar, because they stop, so they don't hit Shinovar. That's the right.
Well, also this story is you get to write it yourself,
he
don't
definitely
you?
makes it over.
So
Does he?
you're both correct.
A final challenge raised its head, a final shadow to his dread. The land did rise up once again, the misted mountains guarding Shin. To leave the storming winds behind, our fleet again began to climb. The storm cut up, the storms again came to his back. The winds again did spin around. The time was short, the ending near. As through those mounts our fleet did dash. It was right upon him, even going down the other side of the mountains. He was unable to stay very far ahead.
Gotcha.
The only bit of that story, honestly, that I did kind of key in on is actually what happens right after you stopped reading there, Tim. He dies, right? but then his soul continues on. It's where, Fleet is chasing. He's running away from the storm. He's making it. He's staying ahead, but then he dies. But then it doesn't end there. It doesn't end with him dying. His soul like carries on. So that the only thing I could maybe take away from that in like relevance to Kaladin was like the bigger picture of what you're doing. Kaladin's kind of fighting this battle of, helping the downtrodden and bringing these bridgemen up to, being soldiers and back to a real life. And maybe this is kind of just touching on the fact that he's, championing a cause, and that cause is greater than himself. And even if he were to die, that cause could still carry on. That was the only thing I could pull out of this, was perhaps that's what Wit's getting at here. But as you said, when you opened it up with Paul, Wit's not even really telling the story. Is it Wit telling the story, or is it Cal story? Like, I don't even know.
Right. Any more thoughts on this chapter or the entire episode here? We've gone a little long, but that's okay.
I actually want to real quick go back to the bunny rabbit and the chick. You mentioned that as the humorous like little intro to this section, and I did laugh pretty good when I read that. But then when I was done laughing, the analytical reader in me actually kicked in immediately and thought, this is hubris, this is funny, this is Sanderson making fun of himself, but it also actually tells us some interesting things. It tells us that Wit knows what a bunny rabbit and a chick are.
Mm-hmm.
And that, if nothing else, tells us that Wit comes from a different land. I mean, we know that chickens exist in Shin, right? So I suppose bunny rabbits could as well. But if Kaladin doesn't know what a bunny rabbit is, or no one knows what a bunny rabbit is, this is a good solid piece of evidence pointing to, Wit is not from here. Like, maybe not even from this planet.
Right.
Kind of, line of reasoning. So it is funny. It is seemingly out of place, but actually an of information there as well, I think.
In a similar vein, back when Hoyd talks to Shallan in the chapter Middlefest, there's an offhand comment about axe hounds, and he asks Shallan, "What is an axe hound? What does that name mean?" And Shallan's like, "What do you mean? It's an axe hound?" And Hoyd's like, "No. You know what an axe is, but what is a hound?" And Shallan's like, "I don't know. Like, what do you want?" So,
yep.
There's been similar banter here, to think about. Any more closing thoughts?
Indeed.
It's actually super funny about the action. My only closing thought in the similar vein is, not only does he know what a bunny rabbit is, and I guess what a hound is, that's what he sees as normal. Like that, I guess that's his first thought.
Yes.
That's like the standard for him. Like, all the crustacean life here is newer, or the non-normal side. So yeah,
exactly.
Either from Shen or from some really far away land. So.
All right.
Yeah. I had two things.
Yeah.
One, somehow I read through the first three books like 2 or 3 times each before you started this podcast. I made it through Words of Radiance 3 times, and 3 or 4, and then Wave Kings a couple more. And I had never realized that it was literally just, normal earth animals, but crab-like, until you mentioned it. And I don't know why that didn't get through, because he literally says crab-like thing.
Yep.
Oh. But my second
Everything
point,
has a spren and everything's a crab. Those are your 2 basic rules for
Yes,
this
that's
world.
true.
yes. My last thing, you have no idea what this means, but just keep it in mind going forward. Wit, when he's tuning his instrument, says, "Perfect pitch," Wit said, "makes all this so much easier than it once was."
I did notice that. I just didn't really think about it much. So
Just to, tantalize you.
Nice food for thought there.
yeah.
Half of our comment section is laughing right now, and the other half is like, what the heck was that? So thank you for that, Tim. And with that, we will close this episode 39 of Following Note On. Thank you for joining me, Elliot, Paul, and Tim, and we will reconvene next week.
Fare thee
Toodles.
well.
Tschüss.